Test, test. Alrighty. I think we're ready to start. 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to another Monday Market Watch. I'm your host, Juju, and today we're going to go over all the big movements that happened over this weekend. Before we begin, I just wanted to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and hope everyone had a great time. As you can see, we have a crap ton of cards to go over, so we're going to try to do this as fast as possible, and here we go. So first up, we're going to start off with the death cards. We had some consolidation happen within all the big cards like Apocalypse Now, Hybrid Knight, Demogorgon, even Jason. So prices have definitely dipped with the big cards, but there are still movements within the smaller cards. So we'll be sure to go over that. With Apocalypse Now, we did see a couple of buyouts over the weekend. It went from 700 all the way back down to 500, even as low as 484. So that goes to tell you that the market is definitely consolidating. There was a big rush for all these cards, especially among competitive players, so it's good to see these cards get a little cheaper so that more people can play them. Next up, we have Neferu. Same thing happened. Peaked over at 347 before the new year, and consolidated to around 280. Pretty good card. It's also a very good card in Board Wipe Death. Yeah, can't say much about that. Sulfuric Rain had a small buyout at 132. Someone bought it 29 copies of the card, and now it's at 141. This card is a key card in Board Wipe Death as well, so no surprise why it's so popular. Dread Queen Persephone experienced a buyout at $97. Now the cheapest price you can get it at as 128. The card is 6 mana. At the start of your turn, a random creature in your hand with the lowest mana cost goes to the void. Summon a random highest mana cost creature from your void. This card has some pretty good shenanigans, especially with the ramp big monster death decks that have been appearing in the meta lately. Nothing too crazy though. I don't think the ramp decks have been very prominent as far as in Mythic rank, but it is a viable option, especially with all the control decks running rampant. Hippocrate's Monster has slowly been climbing. It's been consolidating up to the 85 point. This paired with the next card that we're going to go, which is Neferu's Khopesh, is a pretty strong combination, just because if you have this in your graveyard, Neferu's Khopesh can resummon it pretty much infinitely, as long as you have enough charges for durability in it. But anyways, it's a really strong card. The only downside is that it's 9 mana, so it takes a while to play, and you definitely have to stabilize before playing this card. Neferu's Khopesh, really good card. After you play a death card, give 1 durability to this relic. Ability, pull the creature with the lowest strength from your void to the board. Give it -2 durability to this relic. 4 mana, 0/3. In Board Wipe Death, it serves a pretty nice purpose. You can summon your weak minions like Burrowing Scarab, or even if you don't have Burrowing Scarab, maybe Siren of the Grave, or Ava, Baroness of the Dead, or even Fanatic of Khnum. Gets you more minions, and it's free pretty much. So free tempo as early as turn 5, or if you coin turn 3 and then you play, you can play this card. You can play this card's ability as early as turn 4. So it's pretty good value for what you get. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw this card spike up a little more. We have Pallbearer next with a spike from 8 to 13. This card summon another random creature with Afterlife from your void. For me, you can use this card to recycle your strong Afterlife effects such as Siren of the Grave, Fanatic of Khnum, Burrowing Scarab, even Centurion Guardian. I think it's the 7 mana neutral minion with Afterlife summon a random legendary creature. So it does have some applications, which is why we see the price spike. Corrupt Ceremony. I'm so glad this card sees play. This card is, remember what we talked about with Hipparia's Kriya's Monster. You can actually use this card to like try your luck in RNG and dump like some strong minions into your void so that you can summon them later on with strong effects like Raise Dead or Pallbearer, for example. Pretty good card. Neferu's Kopish also synergizes with this. I'm excited to see this card like bump up in price. Reborn Pharaoh, it's another Reborn Afterlife card. Given random other Anubian Afterlife, pull this creature from the void into your hand. Lets you recycle all your like Anubian Afterlife effects, which isn't bad. Ares Peacemaker has been climbing steadily across the year, across these past couple of weeks. It's a 4-mana 0/7. At the start of your turn, destroy all creatures. If you remember the card Doomsayer from Hearthstone, this card is a similar effect. The only difference is that this card is 4 mana, while Doomsayer was 2 mana. But paired with like a sleep card or a mass stall card, like, I don't know, Siren of the Grave, for example, this card is pretty good. It almost guarantees of board clear. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this card in board wipe death. It's actually a pretty decent effect. The only downside is it's 4 mana and it's very hard to, very slow to play compared to its Hearthstone counterpart. Unnatural Binding received a buyout. 27 copies at an average of 435. Now it's at 642. Give a creature burn 2 whenever this creature attacks. Deal 2 damage to its god. It's a 1 mana spell, so it's very fast to play. I could see this as cheap removal. Also, I could see it for aggro decks, but I also think there are more efficient forms of removal at 1 mana for death, especially. Okay. Now, before we begin on Deception, I'm going to take a sip of water. It's a lot of talking. Okay, next up for Deception, we have Orfeo, Champion of Deception. We see another price spike over here. There was a 25-win Deception deck in Mythic that ran Orfeo, so no surprise about this price spike. It's at $91. Wow, that's amazing. Moving on. We have Sleep Dart. Target creature goes to sleep. It gains burn 3. We're seeing a couple buyouts here. Was as low as 663. Now it's at 1077. Sleep Dart is a pretty efficient removal card. If you ask me, it's 2 mana. Target creature goes to sleep. It gains burn 3. Definitely something. Definitely, sleep is definitely a strong mechanic in this game. So no surprise why there's a price spike. Merchant Prince received a crazy price spike, went from 366 all the way to 810. Roar reduced the cost of all cards in your hand that did not start in your deck by 1. With all the Thief Deception decks coming around, Merchant Prince actually serves as kind of like a very good mana cheating card. If you have a hand full of this, you're pretty much, it's a lot of value and it's a lot of tempo. So very good card. The only downside is the stat line. It's a 4 mana 2/4, which is pretty weak considering its stat line. Needlefang Chameleon also received a buyout at 885. 18 copies were bought. Now we see the cheapest is at 936, but the next level above that is 1381. So if this receives a buyout, we'll see a little bit of a price spike there. Hidden for 1 turn, creatures damaged by this creature get burn 1. I think it's a little overrated, but 1 mana 2/2 isn't a bad stat line. It's also wild. It also has the rare and Genesis set going for it. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this in aggro Deception decks in the future. Shady Merchant is a 3 mana hidden for 1 turn. At the start of your turn, add a random enchanted weapon to your hand. It's a guild creature and it's a 1/3 stat line, which is pretty weak for a 3 mana card. It did receive a crazy buyout though. Went from 130 all the way to 757. I don't know if the value justifies, or the volume justifies this buyout, but only time will tell. Not a bad card. It's just the stat line is pretty weak. Next up, we have False Peace, which is a 4 mana 2 random enemy creatures go to sleep, 2 random friendly creatures go to sleep, and they each get 3 strength. If I'm not mistaken, this card gets a rework. Just kidding. It's a Genesis set, so it's not getting the rework. But anyways, it got bought out at 311, and now it's at 510, which is a pretty reasonable price spike if you ask me. Okay, cool. Moving on to light, we did see a little bit of a consolidation with some of these cards. Zoo Light, I think the hype regarding that deck has died down a little bit. It's still a strong deck, but it's definitely not a flavor of the week deck for sure. But nonetheless, we are seeing some activity around these cards. Highborn Knight has been experiencing some buyouts once it reached the 557 line. As you can see right now, it went all the way from $774 last week to pretty much $400. The cheapest you can get it at is $520. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Still a very strong card. Frontline Protected is definitely, or Frontline Protected and Ward is a very strong combination, and a 4-3-3 stat line, I guess, is decent with those traits. Next up, we have Osiris the Eternal. Afterlife, shuffle this creature into your deck. It keeps all buffs. It is received a buyout. 15 copies were bought at $134.89, or at an average of $134.89 on January 2nd. And now the lowest price you can get it at is $181.55. This card is pretty nice. It's a 3-mana 3/4, which is a good stat line. Afterlife keeps this card pretty much immortal, and it also keeps its buff. So if you can do some buff shenanigans, I don't know, with Chosen One stuff, if this card becomes the Chosen One, it'd be kind of wild. I'm kind of sad that there isn't enough Chosen One support to justify doing this for this card, but if we do see Chosen One support in the future, I can totally see this card see more play. Speaking of Chosen One support, we have a 1-mana Devout Cleric, which is a 1-mana 1/3. Roar, give the Chosen One 1/1 and put it one card closer to the top of your deck. Technically, this card is a 1-mana 2/4 if you include the 1/1 stat bonus. It's just the 1/1 bonus isn't an immediate effect on board, so it's more of a delayed effect. We are seeing some buyouts here, and the cheapest you can see it at is $26.69, which is a $10 difference, almost a $10 difference from what it was before the new year started. Olympian Guard, I'm very happy this card is receiving a price spike. It's a pretty good card. Frontline, at the start of your opponent's turn, give this creature has 2 strength or less, give it 1/1. The only downside is that it's a little slow to get the value. It takes 2 turns to actually make it become a 2-mana 3/4, which can be difficult, but it is a good card nonetheless. I can see it in Zoo Light decks, but that 2-mana slot is very competitive. There are a lot of good cards for that 2-mana slot, but the price spike is justified nonetheless. This card, 2-mana High Thaumaturge, 1/2 Mystic. Whenever a creature is healed, draw a card. This card reminds me a lot like Northshire Cleric in Hearthstone, which is the 1-mana 1/3. The only difference is, of course, it's 2-mana, and I wish it had more health, but it is a powerful effect, especially if you pair this card with like mass heal effects. It's basically a CERN. It's basically a reload button for Zoo Light decks, which is pretty nice, especially for decks that like run out of resources fast. It is a Genesis card, and the rarity is rare, so no surprise why you see this price spike. Next up, we have Parthian Shieldmate, which is a 3-mana 3/3. Frontline, after this creature is healed, give it 1 health. Give Ward to the Chosen One. More Chosen One support. It went from 4 all the way to 783. The cheapest card you can find right now on market is $825. It's a good card, decent. Especially if we do see more Chosen One support, this card would probably be played in Chosen One decks. Next up, we have Lysander's Mercy, which is a spell, 7 mana, pull each creature on the board onto the bottom of their controller's deck. We see a price spike from 169 all the way to 257. That's pretty good. It's a board clear, pretty much, but it's just so slow. 7 mana is basically turn 9, and I don't think the effect justifies the cost, pretty much. Okay, Fortify, which is a 2-mana spell. Draw a card. Give a creature at the end of your turn. If this creature is at full health, it gains 1 health. Otherwise, it heals for 1. We do see a price spike all the way from 40 cents to 73 cents. It is pretty decent. No, I do think it is a good card, but like I said, it just needs to find a niche for a deck. Maybe if there was a control deck for light, maybe this would see more play. Okay, cool. Now that we're done with light, before we jump into magic, I'm going to take another sip of water. Stay hydrated, kids. All right, moving on. We have some magic cards that saw some activity over the weekend as well. We have Guardian of the Gates, 3-mana 1/1 Mystic. Roar, unlock a mana lock, give ward to your god. This card is good for ramp decks because it's a roar effect compared to the Toad, the 3-mana 2/1 Toad. You get the mana lock immediately instead of having to wait for your minion to be destroyed. 21 copies were bought at an average of $153, and the cheapest price you can find this card now is $213.07. This card will see play if ramp decks do see like more play and more viability in the meta, so I would keep an eye out for this card. Next up, we have Circe, Vengeful Sorceress. This card is a 7-mana 3/3. Roar, deal 3 damage to each enemy character, 4C3. This card was bought out at an average of $136.54 and 13 copies on January 2nd. Cheapest price you can find it for now is $157.22. This card is also good in ramp decks, I believe. 7 mana is pretty steep. That's still turn 9. Fewer turns if it's on a ramp deck, of course. But 3 damage to each enemy character is good, and for C3 lets you set up your future turns pretty well. And the fact that it's a 3/3 body means that if you clear the board, you get some tempo, which is good, especially in ramp decks, because you'd want to swing tempo as fast as possible so you can start playing your bigger minions. Next up, we have Trial of the False Reflection. This is a 7-mana spell. Summon a copy of target creature. The copy has, at the start of your turn, summon a copy of this creature. We see a buyout all the way from $3.69 to $11.69. That's $8. This card is pretty good. I could see use in ramp decks as well, or decks where you want to play big minions. This is basically infinite value if your opponent can't deal with a threat, which is very good. It can feel a little win more though. Like if you're in a position to play this card, you're already winning. But I could totally see this card being a viable option in ramp decks. Next up, we have Soothsayer. For C3, draw a card. I'm pretty confused why there's a buyout here, to be honest. Went from $1 all the way to $2.47, and the cheapest you can find it now is $3.37. It's a 4-mana 2/3, which is a pretty weak stat line. For C3 is okay. It doesn't do anything immediately. The only immediate advantage that you have is you draw a card, which for 4 mana, 2/3, and you just draw 1 card. It's a core card, by the way, so anyone can pull this card, and it's only a rare, so it's not going to be that hard to pull as long as you grind if you're a free to play player. So I'm pretty confused why there is a buyout here, but I do remember seeing Copper Pitch releasing a video a couple weeks ago playing this card in a free to play Magic ramp deck, so maybe that justifies it, but honestly, I don't think the buyout is too justifiable, especially when you look at this volume. Okay, moving on. So we're going to go ahead and talk about nature now. Overall, over the weekend, I think Copper Pitch released an Amazon deck list, because Amazons are getting reworked in the next core set. After that video blew up, he posted it on the Reddit. Basically, most Amazon cards jumped in price. Some I understand. Some I'm also just like, okay, you're never going to play that card in an Amazon deck. With that being said, these opinions are my own. If you have your own opinions about the Amazon cards or any other cards that we went over today, feel free to leave them in the comments. But yeah, we're going to go over these cards. So Hippolyta Divided, 6 mana, 4/5. Roar, pick one. This creature gets 1/4 an Olympian, or Blitz, Protected, and Amazon. Very good card, especially for the bonuses that you get. It is justified, I think. It did experience a buyout on December 30th or December 29th. Yeah, there we go. And the price would jump from $184 all the way to $265, which is like an $80 price hike. It's a good card. 6 mana means you're playing it as early as either turn 6. If you don't have a bag, it's as early as turn 7. Yeah, I would be playing Blitz Protected is always a good combination because it's a free trade pretty much the turn you play the card. So yeah, justified. Next up we have Selena, Champion of Nature. This is a 4 mana 3/4 backline ward. Your creatures lose confusion. Ability, deal 2 damage to an enemy, then confuse a random creature. This card is a lot of value, actually. Price spike is justified for sure. Cheapest you could find it now is $220.78. It's a legendary from the Trial of the Gods set. It's an Amazon tag. Goes well with Amazon support. It also goes well with like wild confused support. So if you're playing like those kinds of decks, this card is pretty good because it makes your creatures lose confusion. Overall, pretty solid card. Speaking of wild confusion decks, this is going to be Gloam Druid, 2 mana, 2/2. Roar, your confused creatures get 2 strength. This card is actually very strong. There are a lot of strong confused creatures already, and if you can swarm the board, like I could see this card with that Dragonfly card, the 4 mana 2/2 that summons 2 other copies of itself. If you play this card along with it as early as turn 5, you get 3 4/2s bodies on the board plus the 2/2. So that's a lot of stats for 5 mana. You see a price spike here, a buyout actually. Someone bought 46 copies at an average price of $127.69. That's a pretty significant like buyout if you ask me. And now the cheapest you can find it at is $164. So I would keep an eye out for this card, especially if more wild support comes out. Murdo's Daughter is another Amazon. It's a 5 mana blitz. Roar, pick one. This creature gets 2/2, or another random friendly Amazon gets 4/3. This card actually caught me off guard. It's pretty good because it's a 5. It's a 5 mana 4/4 with blitz, or if you have an Amazon on the field already, it can be a 5 mana 2/2 with blitz, but a 4/3 buff to whatever Amazon you have. And if that Amazon happens to have either Protected or Twin Strike or any of those things, it just doubles that buff. It's actually pretty good. This is a pretty solid card to add in Amazon decks if you ask me. And the price jump is from $3. Oh my god, it peaked at 52 and now the cheapest you can find it is pretty much $40. That's, if you invested in this card, holy crap, great job. Next up we have Trial of the Hydra. This card is pretty good as well. It serves as a finisher. It's along the lines of the Firewine card from Core Set or the Wildfire card from Core Set. Basically, it's give regen 1 to each of your wild creatures. Then give all of your creatures XX, where X is their regen amount. In regen swarm decks, which was a thing before in previous metas, this card would be the finisher. It's actually very good. We see the price spike happen from $14 all the way to $26, which is pretty much $12 price hike. Very good card. I'm not surprised that we see the price hike here. Next up, we have Caller of the Hunt, which is a 6 mana 5/5 Amazon with regen 3. Roar, give each of your creatures, after this creature attacks a creature, deal 2 damage to a random enemy creature. Yeah, it's pretty good stat line for a 6 mana card, especially with the effect you have, and it has regen 3. It might be too slow for Amazons, but I need to test this card more to see. But if I'm playing an aggro deck like Amazons, I wouldn't want to like top anything off at 6 mana unless it's like a finisher card, and this card can count as a finisher, so we'll see. But it jumped from all the way from 18 to 25. Not bad. Next up, we have General Orithia. 7 mana, 5/5 frontline. Roar, summon 2 Amazon recruits, then give each of your other Amazons 2/2 and Twin Strike. So you can play this card as early as turn 8 or 9. And then it's a 5 mana, or it's a 7 mana, 5/5, but then with the 2 recruits and the 2/2 buff, so you summon 2 3/3s. Okay, got it. So you summon 2 3/3 minions along with the 7 mana 5/5 body. This is essentially a 7 mana 11/11 if you don't have, at minimum. This is if you don't have any Amazons. This would be pretty much a finisher for sure. If you have a board of Amazons, they get Twin Strike and 2/2, which is a pretty significant buff. This card is pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this card as a finisher or the boss monster for Amazons, but only time will tell. Next up, we have Steadfast Scout, which is a 3 mana 1/2. If you control at least 2 other creatures, give 2/2 to this creature. So if you're playing a Swarm deck, pretty much this is the 3 mana 3/5, which is a pretty decent stat line actually. We saw the jump from $6 all the way to 13, and now the cheapest price is $11.67. Pretty good card if you get the stat buff. Next up, we have a 5 mana Swelling Boon. Give a creature at the end of your turn 5. Split randomly across strength and health. This card can be good if your opponent has a hard time dealing with a minion. I can see this card doing really well with the Porcupine, the one with 4 armor, the 4 mana card with 4 armor. It just seems very inconsistent to me, and there are better finishers there are better finishers available for Wild right now. Next up, we have a 3 mana Rebel Quartermaster, which is a 3 mana 1/2 Amazon. Whenever you summon a creature, give it 1/1. This card has a lot of potential, especially with Crescent Werewolf, the card that if you summon a wild creature, you gain 1 mana. We did see a price spike here because of the Amazon tag, so it jumped from $4 all the way to $8, which is pretty much a 100% increase. Pretty good card. Only time will tell if these spikes hold. Next up, we have Primal Guidance. This is a 1 mana spell. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy creature. If you control an Amazon, deal 3 damage instead. 3 damage for 1 mana is a pretty good price point, especially in Amazon decks where you're bound to have an Amazon on the field. You do see the jump from $3 all the way to almost $7. Pretty good card. I do see this card being a staple in Amazon decks. Next up, we have Fertility Idol. This is a 7 mana 0/6. At the end of your turn, summon a copy of another random friendly creature. For a card that you can play on turn 8 or 9, I don't think the stat line justifies the effect, really, or the effect justifies the stat line, nor the Amazon tag, but we do see a buyout happen, and it jumped from $1 to $1.60, which is 60 cents. Not bad if you bought like a lot of copies of this card, but I don't think the volume justifies buying anything more than like 10 copies. Next up, we have Sudden Rally. Summon 3 confused Amazon recruits. This is a 3 mana 3/3 with confused. I don't think the card justifies. I don't think the card is good, but I could see it comboing with any of the like buff cards that Amazons have. The fact that it's 3 mana though for 3/3 and the Amazon recruits are confused, it's definitely a pretty weak card in terms of power. But we did see a price hike all the way from 46 to 92. Next up, we have Pack Stock. Refresh mana equal to the number of creatures you control. This card has been seeing an increase in volume lately. It's a core card, so it's very accessible to players, but guess I understand why people are buying it out. But yeah, it's very easy to get, especially if you're free to play. Cool. Wow, nature was a doozy. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, stay hydrated. Okay, now we're moving on to Avatar of War. This is an 8 mana, 8/8 with Leech, Roar, equipped 5/2 Sentient Flame Blades with God Blitz, and after you attack, heal your god for 5. This card is a really good finisher in Control War decks. 8 mana, 8/8 is definite with Leech, is definitely a good stat line, and not only that, it gives you 10 damage worth of weapon of relic damage. Of relic damage. We did see a buyout happen here. Nothing happened to the price really, but 38 copies at an average of $414 is definitely nothing to scoff at. We do see some market movement with this card, and for good reason. Control War is a deck that we'll be seeing a lot more in the meta. Next up, we have Aeneas, which is a 6 mana 3/3 with Blitz, Twin Strike, Protected. At the end of your turn, this creature becomes protected. Blitz and Protected is a very strong combination of traits, and Twin Strike allows it to trade multiple times, preferably with smaller minions. But yeah, we do see an increase in volume here for this card. Next up, we have Dwarven Smiths, which is a 2 mana, 2/2 Viking. Roar, give a relic in your hand plus 1 durability. We did see a buyout happen over here where someone bought it 28 copies for an average of 37.12. This card has some potential because it's a Viking and because relics are starting to become more prominent again, especially in war decks. But only time will tell if this price will hold, because the volume doesn't really justify this buyout, in my opinion. Next up, we have a 4 mana 2/2 Roadside Outfitter. At the end of your turn, give 1/1 to each creature in your hand. This card has also seen an increase in volume, which results in an increase in price. $6.79 for a Genesis Rare seems pretty good. At the end of your turn, give 1/1 to each creature in your hand. If you can keep this card alive, that's a lot of value. The only problem is 4 mana for 2/2 is pretty weak. You're trading a lot of tempo for maybe a little bit. At the very least, you get 1 buff, which is kind of nice, but yeah, it doesn't provide any immediate thing to board. Next up, we have Whetstone, which is a 1 mana spell. Give your relic 4 strength for its next attack. This card has some synergy with relics, of course, and can provide some burst damage for aggro war decks. We see a price hike. It went up and down, but it jumped from 350 all the way to 6. So $6.79, which is a pretty good price spike, especially for a common Genesis card. Next up, we have Nokvi Pillager, which is a 3 mana 3/3 with Twin Strike and Leech. This card is a pretty good card, if you ask me. The 3 mana 3/3 is a decent stat line. It's not the best, but what makes it good is the Twin Strike and Leech. So if you're playing a mid-range war deck that kind of is focused on like surviving to like playing, I don't know, your 6 mana, 7 mana, 8 mana cards, this card can be really good against anti-aggro, or against aggro, sorry, as an anti-aggro against aggro. But yeah, this card is really good. It's been climbing steadily in price, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see more activity later down the line. Okay, next up we have Reinforcements, which is a 3 mana spell. You randomly pull 2 creatures from your deck, each with a mana cost of 2 or less, into your hand. This can be a refill for aggro decks, or if you're playing a deck where you specifically need a 1 mana to 2 mana card, this card can be played to tutor it. We see a price hike from $104 to $179, which is almost $1. Pretty decent card, but there might be better cards available for aggro decks. Next up, we have Blessing of War, which is a 3 mana spell. For each war creature in either void, you gain 3 favor and your opponent loses 3 favor. I don't really understand this price hike, to be honest, but it jumped from 40 cents to 72. It's 3 mana for no immediate... it's 3 mana for no immediate impact on board, which seems like a waste of mana. Yeah, you can get a card from the Sanctum, but depending on how early your turn is, you won't be able to play that card on the same turn. So it doesn't create any immediate impact, really, which is why I don't understand this price spike. Cool. That was a doozy. I'm going to take a break. 1 second. Water break. Cool. Now we're moving on to the neutral minions. Last final stretch of the Market Watch. Here we go. We'll start off the big bad boy of himself, the Demogorgon. 7 mana leech. At the end of your turn, deal 3 damage to a random sleeping enemy creature. All of the creatures go to sleep. If you follow the game, you know what this card does. 7 mana, 4/6. You play this as early as turn 8 or 9. But the stat line isn't impressive, but what's impressive is the mass sleep effect and the leech. I think this card makes it really strong against aggro, which is why you see the price. If you ask me, the price is very overpriced. But anyways, this past week, we did see a consolidation. It went from 2,000 all the way down to 1,300. During January 1st or during the New Year's, I was actually checking this card out, and there are actually cards lower than 1,300. Like, there are some cards at 1,200. We did see a buyout happen on January 1st. Someone bought 59 copies at an average of 1,304.31. That's wild to me. Someone must have a lot of money, or this must have been like a group buyout or something. But yeah, 59 copies were bought out. Now we're seeing a slow increase in price. Now it's back up to 1461, climbing back up to 1500. This card is pretty good. It's just mind-boggling to me that people will pay like this much for a card. But I mean, hey, if you're a competitive player and you want to play the best decks, you're gonna need a Demogorgon for sure. But yeah, that's that. Next up, we have Jason, Medea's Muse. This is a 3 mana 3/3 devil legendary creature 3 times and add them to your deck. This is the most expensive. No, actually, there's a more expensive legendary card, but this is the most expensive legendary card in the Genesis set. We've been seeing a small decline, which is pretty interesting to me. The cheapest you can buy it at is 1,300 right now. This card is good in control decks, specifically in control versus control matchups, where you can add 3 legendary cards, 3 threats, and also you prevent yourself from reaching fatigue 3 more turns. Very good card. It also has the Olympian tag if you ever want to play an Olympian deck. But yeah, and you delve the legendary, so you get to choose which legendaries you put instead of them being random. So that's always nice. Next up, we have Aether Chest. Yes. So these next couple cards, there were some buyouts for Aetherbot cards, which is pretty interesting to me, because I don't think a lot of them are very good. But who am I? Who am I to say that, you know? But yeah, here we go. Aether Chest, 3 mana, 0/6, frontline. Can attack, burn 2, afterlife. Add 2 random Atlanteans to each player hand. Serves as a stall card, adds more Atlanteans to both your players, so it benefits your opponent as well. Can be useful, I guess. I don't know. Very interesting card, though. Next up, we have the Iron Horse, which is a 7 mana 5/5 with Protected and Ward. Afterlife, summon a random anim. Protected Ward is a good combination. 7 mana 5/5 is decent stat line, kind of. It's just 7 mana is turn 8 and 9. So if you're waiting turn 8 and 9 to play a 5/5, I don't know. But I mean, Protected Ward is pretty good. That's what makes Harbor Knight good. So I could kind of see the price the price being justified here. Kind of. Next up, we have good old Pyramid Warden, which is a 2-mana 2/6 frontline afterlife. Your opponent summons a random creature from their void. This card is pretty good. I also think this card is kind of overrated though, but we are seeing increased activity around this 386 400 mark. Which goes to tell you that the market probably accepts this price. It's a good card if you're especially running aggro decks. Like, you'd want to play this card for sure, and it's also good against aggro, unless you're running Minucian Infiltrator, which if you're running aggro, you probably should, to be honest. But yeah, good card. Price point's at 400. We'll wait and see if it can hit this 500 again, but only time will tell. Cool, Teyet, Hair to the Sky, 9 mana 6/9, nice. With flank, frontline, twin strike, ward. At the end of each turn, this creature gets ward. This creature gets 2/1 for each card in your hand. We did see a buyout here. Someone bought 25 copies at an average price of $193.18. Now, the cheapest price you can find it at is $247. I don't know if the volume justifies that price point, but you never know. Odysseus Tried Victor, which is a 5 mana 3/7 frontline. Summon 3 1/1 injured soldiers with frontline, and Odysseus Tried Victor takes 6 damage. Okay, so I've thought a lot about this card, and if you can pair this with, like, I don't know, that 1 mana light card that's a 1 mana 1/1 that heals all minions for 4, this card can provide a pretty good amount of value as early as turn 5. We did see a buyout here. Someone bought 21 copies around 152.62, and now the cheapest price you can get it at is 202. This card can be good. It's also an Olympian, so Olympian support works with it as well. But I don't think anyone has shown its potential yet within the meta, so we can't really say if this card is good or not. Next up, we have Ashen Drake, good old Ashen Drake. This is a 7 mana 6/5 dragon. Deal 4 damage to an enemy creature, and 4 more damage split randomly among enemy characters. Buyout happened. Someone bought 28 copies at $135.51. Cheapest price you can find it at is $149.69. I don't know if the volume really justifies it. It can be a good card, for sure, at 7 mana 6/5, but it's a little slow, and 5 health isn't very impressive, really. Not like that Atlantean Horse where it was a 7 mana 5/5 and the protected and ward. 5/5 is pretty, like, fragile, if you ask me. Cool. Next up, we have a buyout for the Sky Reaver. 45 copies were bought at $119.79. Now the cheapest you can find it is $150. After an Aether attacks, draw a card. This is Aether support, 5 mana 5/5. Sounds pretty decent, especially with a draw effect. This could work in Aether decks. I just haven't seen Aether decks in the meta. Cool, Expectant Chicken. I love this card. This card was bought out 21 copies, 116. Now it's 143.25. Volume's kind of decent. I don't know if I'd buy 21 copies of it though. But it's a 1 mana Confuse, summon a Chicken Egg. This card is really good. The Chicken Egg summons a 2/2. It's a Death Rattle that summons a 2/2. Very good card in aggro decks. I have a couple of ideas of how to use this card, but yeah, it's basically a 1 mana 3/3 or a 1 mana 3/5 technically, because if you count the egg is a 0/2 with burn, and then when it dies, it summons a 2/2. So 1/1 plus 2/2 plus 0/2 is 3/5. That's an insane amount of stats for 1 mana, and it has a wild tag. So there are all sorts of shenanigans you can do with this card. I won't go into detail, but yeah, there's a lot of potential here. Next up, we have Pandora the Curious, and it won't load. So I can't really tell you what effect it does. But it's a legendary. It's from Genesis set, which means it's probably going to be over $100. There's a buyout that happened at $100. 9 copies were bought, and now the cheapest you can find it as $132.82. Scarab Swarm. Okay, so this card saw buyout. It went from $18 all the way to $30. It's a 1 mana 1/2. After a creature dies, heal your god for 1. It's also a wild. 1 mana 1/2 isn't a good stat line, and healing your god. It's not a good early game card. Like early game heal. Like, you're not going to use that, really, because everyone starts at 30 health, unless you're playing, like, this crazy aggro deck. But even then, when you trade your cards, you're only healing for 1. So, I don't know if there's value there, but, I mean, I could see why people buy it out. I mean, it's a Genesis, it's from the Genesis set, and it's epic. But the card effect just doesn't do much for me. Next up, we have Spiral Golem. This is a 6 mana 8/10. At the start of your turn, this creature attacks a random enemy creature. I like this card. 6 mana 8/10. Very good stat line, and it's a free attack. It has the Atlantean tag, so it goes well with like Atlantean support. But yeah, I do like this card. It jumped all the way from $10 to the cheapest you can find now is $25, which is wow. That's a spike for sure. Only time will tell if we see this price come down, but I don't know. It's looking like it won't come down. Next up, we have Pious Giant. This is 6 mana 6/6. Roar. If you have 20 favor or more, lose 20 favor and give 3/3 and ward to this creature. Can be a 6 mana 9/9, which is really strong. You just have to have 20 favor, but it's doable. We do see a steady climb. It's all the way at $22 right now, which is pretty nice. Pretty nice for a 6 mana 6/6. Okay, we have Pixie Lock. This is a 3 mana 1/3 Amazon. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Nimble Pixie. So it summons another Nimble Pixie. Technically, it's a 1 mana 2/4 or a 3 mana 2/4 with added bonuses if you can manage to keep it alive. This card can be good with Amazon decks. It jumped all the way from $9 to $19 to $20, and it peaked at 20. So can be a good card. Only time will tell if Amazon decks can make this card work, but there's a possibility there. Next up, we have Philosophic Evangelist. Wow, that's a crazy name. 3 mana 2/4 Mystic. After this creature attacks, gain 2 favor. We did see a little bit of a price spike here. It went from $4.94 all the way to $7.19. Now the cheapest you can find it at is $10.23. It's a promo card. That's why. Yeah, because the effect isn't good. This creature attacks, gain 2 favor. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. 2 favor is not a lot. Stat line isn't good either. It's a 2 mana 2/4. Skeleton Heavy is the same stat line for 1 less mana. So I can only see it justified by being a promo card, because those cards are pretty hard to find if you ask me. So yeah, all right, I can kind of see it. Servant of Inti. This is 3 mana 5/1. Give a friendly Amazon protected. This card is pretty good, especially if you have an Amazon that can be buffed by other Amazons. I don't know. There are a lot of Amazon cards that do that. Jumped all the way from 464 all the way to late 11. The only thing I don't like about it is 1 health is very fragile, and it trades with pretty much any hero power. Student of Blades is a 3 mana 3/3 Olympian. After a friendly creature attacks, gain 3 favor. We did see a price spike happen from $2 all the way to $6. Wow, that's crazy. I could see this being good in aggro decks. It's just there's so many better 3 mana cards to play, and aggro decks already get like favor. Pretty much, because they're always attacking. They're either attacking face or whatnot. So I don't know if this is justified, but maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Next up, we have Empire's Footman. This is a creature 2 mana 1/1 Olympian. This creature gains 2 strength if you have an Olympian in your void. If you have 3 or more, it also gains protected. So it can be a 2 mana 3/1 as early as turn 2 if you can get 3 or more Olympians in your void, but that seems kind of hard. There's a buyout that happened earlier. It jumped from $3 all the way to $6. Next up, we have Diligent Architect. Roar, delve a structure, add it to your hand, and give it 2 health. This is 3 mana 2/2, and it's guild. All right, so there is a conversation about this card being good on Reddit. So 3 mana 2/2 is a very weak stat line for sure. It's really weak, especially if you're playing against like meta decks, like an aggro's war or a zoo light or whatever, wild even. The fact that you can delve a structure and add it to your hand and give it 2 health, like structures can be very overpowered, but you're basically trading your third turn or your turn where you play 3 mana for 2/2. You're losing tempo for the hopes of gaining tempo in the future, which it's all right. But we do see a price spike here. Who am I to judge? It went all the way from $3 to $6, and now it's consolidating at $5.52. Decent card. I don't know if I would invest in a buyout for this. Next up, we have a Nimble Pixie, which is a 1 mana 1/1 flank, roar, summon a Nimble Pixie. It's an Amazon. Pretty solid turn 1 card, if you ask me. You summon this, you summon another Pixie. Synergizes well with swarming Amazon effects. Can be good. So we see a buyout happen. It was bought out at $325 and peaked at $668. Now it's consolidating over at $524. 6 mana, Hallowed Keeper. This creature gets 1 strength for every 2 creatures in your void. That seems okay. It's an Aether, and it's a 3/7. I don't understand the buyout, but it went from $193 over to $5. Jesus. Maybe there's a deck that popped up that I don't know of, but yeah, I don't know. I don't understand this. It's really slow. Justifying why I think it's slow, it's 6 mana for 3/7, and then it gets 1 strength for every 2 creature in the board, and assuming that you play this as early as turn 5, because as early as turn 6, you'd have to play, for it to be a 7/7, you'd have to kill 8 minions. Yeah, I don't know. That's confusing to me. Okay, anyways. Ooh, wow. Frumentari Researcher. That's interesting. Frumentari. After you summon a Mystic, deal 2 damage to a random enemy character. This is a 3 mana 2/4. Sounds pretty interesting. There could be like some hidden Mystic synergies that I'm not seeing here, but it jumped all the way from 191 to 436. Next up, we have Inflammable Imbecile. This is a 1 mana 2/4 with burn 1. It's also a Mystic. I like this card. There are a lot of ways to play around burn, especially if you can get armor on this. You can pair this with High Thaumaturge for something that you can heal every turn and draw. Yeah, and 1 mana 2/4 is a very good stat line. Of course, it's going to be a 1 mana 2/3 at the end of your turn, but people play Boar, and I don't know. I think this is pretty good. Yeah, anyways, we see a jump from 172 all the way to $3. And final card, Jaguar Rider, which is a 4 mana 6/3 wood flank, and it's an Amazon. We do see a price spike here. Jumps from 118 to 189. Nothing too big, but the cheapest you can find it at right now is $250. 6 mana or 4 mana 6/3, decent because I like the 6 strength, but I don't like the 3 health. Easily removed with like a 1 to 2 mana card. And that's it. Wow, that was a doozy. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gods Unchained Monday Market Watch. If you liked what you saw, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this if you can. Also, if you have any comments about like the market or any of the cards gone over here, like feel free to comment down below. I love interacting and I love talking about like the market or the cards. Yeah. Also keep an eye out for more content too, because I'm probably going to do more things other than market watches. With that being said, please like the channel. It supports me and it helps me like continue to do this. Anyways, cheers y'all. Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed, and see you soon. Bye-bye.